Yes. You're mute. Well, we welcome you to another edition of the Coach Mike Houston Radio Show. We're at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley, and I must say there is a little bit of a buzz about the Citadel Bulldogs right now with a 2-0 start to the season, and the Dogs are set to go on the road for the first time this week as they will take on an old Southern Conference foe in Georgia Southern. My name is Mike Legg. Thanks for being with us this evening as the head coach of the Bulldogs is alongside as well, Coach Mike Houston. Coach, congratulations. I've told you that already, and I'm sure that others have told you that this week on quite an impressive victory for your football team on Saturday.
Thanks a lot, and it was certainly a great night for our program and for our alumni, and a great atmosphere in the stadium. The core. I could not sing their praises enough of how enthusiastic they were behind us and created a real electric atmosphere and throughout the stadium, and certainly our team played well and fed off of that. So it was really a really great night and a big win.
That core got real loud when you and I were talking after the game, and so you're going to have them coming back if all the time that you're getting victories that the second and first class cadets are getting overnights, and I think that's what happened there.
Yeah, I think the sophomores were a little ticked off, but they expected an overnight. But Captain Peluso, he had something he withheld there. But anyway, yeah, it made for a great night, and a lot of credit goes to them for creating a great atmosphere. But really proud of the way the team played Saturday night.
We have a great group of fans / alumni with us here. So, folks, thank you very much for being here. This is a great crowd. They're filling in. We're getting close to standing room only, and that is a very good thing. Bulldogs get a win 28-10 over Western Carolina, and so for the foreseeable future, the Dogs will be at least in a share of first place. There is a league game this weekend with Chattanooga and Samford, which someone will join the Bulldogs at the top, but they are not going to fall out of that position for a significant period of time. And Coach, I know you're not satisfied totally with the way the ball game went. There are some things, obviously, that you're going to find from time to time that you didn't necessarily like. But I know that an awful lot of people were very impressed.
Well, I think the thing that was most impressive was how we played, from an intensity level, from a physicality level. Obviously the level of contact was very high on our end, and I thought that was really maybe a defining factor in the ball game. And I thought we really wore down Western on both sides of the ball as the game wore on. And so that was the thing that I was most pleased with, and probably the thing that the fans were most impressed with. And obviously we played extremely well defensively to limit a high-powered offense like that to 10 points. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that we weren't on the field a whole lot defensively in the second half. At halftime, I think we were down maybe 8 minutes in time of possession, and then we finished winning the time of possession by 10 minutes overall for the ball game. So obviously in the second half, our offense did a great job of controlling the line of scrimmage and controlling the football.
Yeah, you didn't give Western Carolina much of a chance to get their breath about them. Certainly after halftime, it was definitely your defense got off the field. There's no question about that. Yeah. And coaches will tell you that they can get off the field anytime they want to, and your guys are doing that more often.
Well, we're getting off the field without surrendering points too. So you can get off the field either way, but if you can get off the field without surrendering points, that's a true key right there.
To Coach's point, the Bulldogs trailed in time of possession at halftime, 16:09 to 13:51. The game ended up 35-05 Bulldogs, 24-55 Western Carolina. It's a huge difference in the second half when it really counts.
Yeah, and you really saw it in the fourth quarter where their defenders just could not compete anymore with our offensive line, and really even the last drive of the game, I didn't feel like their offense. I just thought they were done. So the game was finished by then.
That was a fun feeling, right? And
yeah.
To see that on the other side.
Yeah, and it's something that we've been fortunate enough to experience a lot over the years. It's something that we, really until the other night, had not experienced here. So it's something that I hope becomes a regular occurrence at the Citadel who were able to finish off people after halftime and really put the game away. So it was a real good feeling.
We're here for the entire hour. We're going to interact with the crowd if they wish. They can send us up some questions if they want to. You can tweet your questions to Coach or myself. I'm at Mike Legg Tweets. He's at Citadel_Coach. If you have something you want to ask us during the show, specifically ask Coach, you can work with us in that particular way. Bulldogs are 2-0 for the first time since 2012 when they went 3-0 to start the season, and they can match that whenever they go to Georgia Southern on Saturday for their next football game. We've come to our first time out. We'll come back with more with the Coach from Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley in a moment on Sports Radio 1450.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Welcome back to the Coach Mike Houston radio show from Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley. My name's Mike Legg, the head coach of the Bulldogs. Mike Houston is alongside. The Citadel Bulldogs are 2-0 after a win over Western Carolina, and they put the Catamounts at 1-1 just this past Saturday. To look at the game just a little bit, a scoreless first quarter, then the Bulldogs would score first on a touchdown run by Dominique Allen. A longer drive, 9 plays, 79 yards. Then a field goal by Western Carolina would make it 7-3.
That job, which he did win. He's going to go. He's got a man past the 30 of first.
He should have possibly been up more at the half. Right before the half, we had a great drive going, and unfortunately threw an interception there right about the 5-yard line. Or we would have been up, 14-3 at the half. Of course, Western got inside our 5-yard line twice there in the second quarter, but had a great fourth down stop. Mitchell Jeter, breaks through on the zone play and tackles Trez Newsom for about a 2-yard loss on 4th and 1. And then the second time down there, we held them to a field goal. So, the game statistically was pretty evenly matched at the half, but really, I hate we didn't get that other score right there before the half.
Mitchell Jeter is proof positive that you don't have to put up 8, 10, 12 tackles a ball game to make an impact on a game. He had 4 stops, he had a sack, and he had 2 tackles for loss.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the sack coming out of the locker room beginning of the second half, we get the ball, we start driving it and turn the ball over on our side of the 50. So sudden change situation for our defense, and we're able to get 2 stops, get him to a 3rd and long situation, and he comes up with a big sack that put the ball on the other side of the 50. We're able to force a punt and basically get a do-over for Dom and the offense there. So those 2 plays I thought were critical in the ball game: the 4th down stop and then the big sack on 3rd down, first possession, second half.
You have shared with me before in one setting or another that you felt like the defense needs to improve and the defense is going to improve.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, with a small sample size, 2 ball games, I'm not sure I expected it to improve as much as I've seen so far, and I think a lot of people agree with me on that.
Well, and hopefully that'll continue. I thought that we've put in a tremendous amount of work. I mean, it was more than just your normal off season this year. We went and visited several different places and brought some new ideas in of some ways to defend the RPO, the run pass option offense. And then our kids, really put in a lot of work in spring practice and summer and fall camp to prepare themselves for the season. And so we saw, improved play all throughout preseason. And, you never know, what you're going to look like against somebody else, because even though you see it in practice, you still want to see it in the ball game. But, certainly through 2 weeks, we've seen exactly what we saw during the preseason on the field. So, very excited with the way we're playing on that side of the ball.
Back to the Western Carolina game, 6:48 to go, 3rd quarter. They score after a 6-play, 68-yard drive, and all of a sudden, for the first time in the ball game, your team's behind. You didn't take very long, though, only 6 minutes later. So for all but 6 minutes and 3 seconds, you led that football game the other day. Obviously, getting that a break that went your way was very helpful. 45 seconds to go, 3rd quarter. Vinny Miller's about to score, but the ball squirts out. But Jorian Jordan, right place, right time.
Right place, right time, yeah. And Jorian has a knack for that. 2 weeks in a row he's come up with a big play. The one last week was on a touchdown reception. The one this week was just, being aware and being awake and being able to recover the fumble for the touchdown there to keep us ahead. But, that was something we talked about all week also was, we're playing a good football team. They're going to make a run at us. We talked about it at halftime. They're going to come back. We've got to be able to respond. So I thought getting that momentum back there at the end of the 3rd quarter was key.
Bulldogs would score twice in the 4th quarter to put the game away. They'd go up 21-10 on a touchdown run by Evan McField. Dominique Allen would score for the 2nd time in the ballgame from 5 yards out on a very short field, 23-yard field to work with there, and 1:31 was the time of the drive. Dogs would score to win the game 28-10. And you kind of alluded to this just a little while ago, but I wanted to touch on it a little bit more. And that is that when it's tied at halftime, mid-3rd quarter comes around. I guess maybe the better question would be, when did exactly in the 3rd quarter did you feel like the game turned and you felt like, hey, we're in pretty good shape here. This is probably ours. I'm seeing some guys on the other side of the football that are a little bit beat up and tired.
Well, towards the end of the 3rd quarter, and at that point, really, it was just, as long as we don't do anything to shoot ourselves in the foot, turnovers can swing the momentum quickly, and people can get renewed energy when that happens. But I felt like towards the end of the 3rd quarter, they were getting pretty desperate. I felt like we were winning the battle at the line of scrimmage on both sides. And so you kind of, you've been in enough situations like that where you knew if we took care of business that, before long the game was going to be out of reach.
How in the world did you get away with just 3 penalties in that ballgame?
Well, actually only 2 attributed to us. 1 got declined. So,
I got you.
And that's been, our big focus in the off season was we said, okay, there's 4 areas that we want to try to win each week. One of them being the kicking game, one of them being the time of possession, one of them being penalties, and one of them being turnovers. And so we felt like if we could win those 4 phases or those 4 areas each week, that we should win the ball game. And so we put a big emphasis on penalties. We talked about, I started to show them the video from the beginning of the year last year where, Coastal Carolina, Florida State, Charleston Southern, we just had, we'd have 8 or 9 penalties each week, especially against Coastal, several penalties in the red zone that kept us out of scoring situations. But we made our point, and the kids have done a great job of really focusing on let's don't do things to put ourselves in negative situations offensively or defensively with senseless penalties. And so I think that's really a tribute to them taking a lot of ownership in what some of the things that we did wrong last year and how they can correct them easily this year.
Going into last week's ball game against Western Carolina, we talked a lot about Troy Mitchell.
Right.
Because part of what he did against the Dogs the season before, but also what he's done against about everybody. He's a talented kid who can throw the football, who can run with the football. I know you had a game plan going in to try to contain him.
Right.
Can you talk about the things you tried to do to limit him? Obviously, I think your defensive coordinator, Maurice Drayton, had a very good line when I spoke to him before the ball game. He said, we can contain him. Only the good Lord's the only one who can really stop him.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about what you tried to do with Mitchell? Because it worked. He seemed to be neutralized to a degree.
In the run game, we changed up how we were playing him. So we tried to make sure that we were able to get somebody in his face pretty quickly to get the ball out of his hands. And we knew that was risky because with two good running backs, if it's not in his hands, it's going to be in somebody else's. But we really went in with the mindset of we're going to try to keep the ball out of his hands and force the bulk of the ball carrying to be done by the running backs, which we were able to accomplish. And then the other way that he's hurt us and everybody else this year is scrambling, on drop back passes. And so we try to do, a great job with getting pressure around him and collapsing the pocket inward, having some pressure up the middle, but also having a spy, a secondary spy in there that his whole focus was not to get pressure on Troy Mitchell. It was to track him down once he started scrambling. And so you had one guy that kind of hung back and spied the quarterback, and then hopefully you're able to get him on the ground there. He got out a couple of times on us because he's a great athlete. But for the most part, all night long, we forced them into a situation where he had to throw the ball down the field. We tried to take away the short throws also. So we tried to force the ball down the field, and unfortunately that worked out for us.
Bulldogs get the win, 28-10. There may be some other things we talk about with regard to that game when we come back in a moment, but time for a break here. I'll go to break with a few numbers. After 2 ball games, the Citadel Bulldogs have allowed just 10 points. They are first in the country in rushing yards per game, averaging 438. Third down, they are first in the country, converting 69% of their third down conversions. In the first quarter, getting off to good starts, the Bulldogs have outscored the opposition 21-0. In the fourth quarter, it's 28-0 Bulldogs. So some numbers to chew on as we go to break. From Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley, this is the Mike Houston Radio Show on Sports Radio 1450. Welcome back to Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley, and we are back with the Mike Houston Radio Show with the head coach. I'm Mike Legg. After a 28-10 victory over Western Carolina, the Citadel Bulldogs are 2-0 on the season. Just a few other things to go over from the ball game you just played, Coach. A little later on in the show, obviously, we'll move on into the opponent at hand, and I know from a preparation perspective, you already moved on, but a few things bear repeating and mentioning again. For example, for 2 weeks in a row now, you've had a hit that has just charged up your sideline, the whole stadium for that matter. And this week, it was Devon Floyd on the far sideline in front of the Western Carolina sideline. And amazing that that young man, Newsom, was able to get up after that.
Well, yeah, and Tevin is really a great complete player. He's very good against the run. He's great in coverage, good blitzer, very good tackler. And he's in a situation there where he was, did a great job in coverage, made a great break on the football, and really, Mitchell kind of hung Newsom out to dry a little bit, with a little bit of a high throw right there. But Tevin did a great job of just absolutely running through the receiver. Broke the pass up, huge hit, and certainly kind of, set the tone for the night. That's kind of the way our defense played all night long, and so a great play by him. You got more stats from D. Delaney, another couple of picks for him. He now has 3 on the season, and so that young man appears to have really improved. I saw more tight coverage on the corners than I've seen in the past, and obviously you can speak to that. I saw there were several times during the ball game where I talked about you being bump and run on the corners. Right, and that's the biggest reason for that's where you're older. We played with a bunch of freshmen last year at corner, so we've got a fifth-year senior, Muriel Cooper, out there. You have a redshirt sophomore now in D. Delaney. You got a redshirt sophomore in Ben Roberts, a redshirt sophomore in Tyus Carter, a true sophomore in Shai Phillips. They're not a bunch of rookies out there anymore, and so they've worked very hard to improve over last year. And, the one stat that's lost in D's game is, he guarded Spearman Robinson, who is, a first-team all-conference receiver and, maybe one of the best, if not the best receiver in the league. And I think he had, 2 catches for 3 yards on the night or something like that. I mean, it was, a minimal amount, less than 10 yards receiving on the night. So that really speaks to what kind of ball game he has. We got a question texted in that has to do with asking what your thoughts are, feelings are about kicking game, punting, field goals. Well, I think our kicking game in general has been much improved over last year as well. I don't know what we're giving up kickoff return average, but it's pretty good. Our coverage has been very, very good. Eric's, we've had several touchbacks there. So, we're doing a good job with coverage. Our punt team, we haven't punted much, so Will has limited punts, but he had a good night the other night and is doing a great job there. And in the return game is better than it was a year ago. So I feel like we're really improved there. Eric has been great during preseason camp. The field goal unit, we haven't attempted a field goal yet, but certainly that's no reflection on our confidence in him, because I certainly have a lot of confidence in him right now. Van Vick only punted 1 time in the opener, then 3 times against Western Carolina, had a 49-yarder that really got you out of an end. I mean, that was after the stop down there inside the 5-yard line, so Will was able to turn the field over. I remember thinking, kick it as far as you can in this particular instance. He sure did. He got it back there pretty well. But he averaged 40 yards a punt on 3 efforts this past week against Western Carolina in the victory at home, 28-10. I mentioned this to you in the press conference yesterday at Johnson Haygood Stadium, Coach, but I know, speaking for my business, if someone speaks highly of your performance and they are in your shoes, they do your line of work, it tends to carry maybe a little bit more weight than the average compliment does. No offense to any other compliment, but when someone knows what you do for a living, it makes more sense. I would think in your case, a coach, particularly an opposing coach, if they say something positive about how your team plays as a whole, would be
particularly weighty, if you will. Did Mark Spear offer any type of compliments in the handshake line after the ball game?
Sure.
What did he say about the team he faced versus the team he faced a year ago?
Well, the roles were, almost flipped from the way they were last year, he and I. So I knew exactly how he felt after the game, and Mark's been a friend for a long time, so I felt for him from that respect. But even though, how he was feeling there, he was very complimentary of our effort. And sent me a text later on that night as they were driving back, just how well our team had played and how much improved he thought we were over a year ago. So certainly he's a first-class coach, and I have no doubt they're going to rebound from that. They got a tough one this week at Tennessee, but he'll get those guys back on track, and I expect them to be a factor in the conference race before the year's over.
They do have plenty of opportunities, obviously, after this one. Game number 2. And a game on the road was a tough one. I know they didn't feel like they got into what they wanted to do from an offensive perspective, but based on what you were telling us earlier, the one thing that always bothers me is sometimes the defense doesn't get enough credit for that. You were a big reason they didn't get into a lot of the things they wanted to offensively.
Yeah, I thought our kids, and I said it earlier in the week, our staff spent a lot of time this summer on that game plan. And really a lot of the research we did was to defend that style of quarterback. And so a lot of work went into that, and then I thought the kids went out and they really played well executing what we were trying to do. I thought we were very disciplined. I thought they played very fast, and I thought they played very physical. And so if we can do that with our game plan week to week, where they're disciplined with the way we play it and then they play it fast and physical, we're going to have success throughout the year.
Citadel Bulldogs are 2-0. They get the victory 28-10 at home. And so for this particular show, we will put the Western Carolina game behind us unless someone tweets in or texts in a question at Mike Legg Tweets and at Citadel_coach. If you want to tweet in your question, you can also jot it down, walk it up to us. We do have a microphone up here if someone wants to walk up and actually ask a question during the show this evening. Last thing before we go to the break, Coach, what are you eating tonight here at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue?
I have a barbecue wrap, so a pork barbecue wrap, and it's fantastic. I'll tell you, I'd had their wings before, but I hadn't tried a lot of their other foods. But I've actually had this for the 3rd week in a row now, so we're on a 2-game winning streak, so I'm not changing it up a whole lot. So I hope I can stick with the same meal all year.
That would be great. That would be great. Good stuff here at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue. Hope you'll come out and see the show or come and see them during the week for lunch or dinner. This is a great place. I know that tonight, for example, after us, they always have a band that performs here on the stage, and so it's an active night here. We appreciate everyone who is here joining us. We appreciate everyone who is listening all across the area as the Bulldogs are 2-0. Their next opponent is on the road, and it is a team they used to play all the time in the Southern Conference, the Eagles of Georgia Southern. We'll talk about that when the coach and I come back to Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in just a moment on Sports Radio 1450.
There's more for you at Substation 2. Since 1975, Substation 2 has been serving sliced-to-order, freshly made subs on our specialty New York-style bread, piled high with the finest meats and freshest produce. From the number 19 Super Special with 7 mouth-watering meats and cheeses to an assortment of specialty sandwiches and salads, Substation 2 proudly supports the Citadel Bulldogs with 2 locations in Charleston and 43 locations throughout the Southeast.
To Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley. This is the Mike Houston Radio Show with the head coach. I'm Mike Legg, and thanks for being alongside as the Bulldogs are 2-0, and they're set to move on to their first road game of the season. They'll take on Georgia Southern on Saturday, a 6 o'clock ball game. Georgia Southern. Now, there's a name in the FCS record books that is listed an awful lot of times. They built a tremendous tradition in that division before moving up. And the interesting thing, they go to the Sun Belt and FBS last year. They win the league. They won the league the first year they came into the Southern Conference, too, back in '93. So they have a knack for winning a league in their first year in it and kind of taking it to everybody there. So.
Well, in the SoCon, I remember, growing up, Georgia Southern, that's when they were on their run with Irk Russell. And then later Paul Johnson, who both had tremendous success there and really were dominant at the FCS level. But when they moved up last year, it's Willie Fritz came in from Sam Houston State. After Coach Monken left to go to Army, and he inherited a very veteran group there already. At Georgia Southern, and so they went into the Sun Belt Conference. I think that. It is a step up at the FBS level, but I think they demonstrated, probably the strength of the Southern Conference, but, being able to go up and go undefeated in their first year in the Sun Belt. But certainly looking at them on film this week and this summer, they do not look like a Southern Conference team anymore. They don't look like an FCS team. They're much bigger. And taller than on the offensive defensive lines. They have tremendous speed on both sides of the football, and so they are really a good football team.
We're going to grab a question from the audience here, and so let's go on out there. First of all, tell us your first name. What's your question?
Yeah, my name is Tommy. Coach, in the fourth quarter, there was, I think, an unsportsmanlike dead ball and a sportsmanlike foul called on us. I saw you ask the referee, talk to the referee. What did he say was the basis of that call?
Well, I think it was D. Delaney got it. He broke up a pass to Spearman Robinson. And I think he celebrated a little too much. Yeah. So great play. He just he needs to move on to the next play.
We've got a good crowd on hand with us tonight. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand. Jay Harper, who works the sidelines with us during the games, is here and has a microphone. You might have to come up toward our table here if you want to get that question in. We want to watch out for the speaker feedback, but it looks like
we might be selective with who we give that microphone to in the audience.
We do have another question, so let's go ahead and check in with the next one here. Go ahead.
Yeah. Coach, maybe I didn't.
Yeah, we've got to get you up here pretty close.
It didn't appear that you ran the classic triple option, like bellying the fullback, reading the end, pitching out. It didn't look like you did that at all. Was that intentional?
Well, each week, again, a lot of what we do depends on what the opposing defense is doing to us. What they're giving us and what they're doing there. So we didn't run as much inside veer last week. We did run a good bit of outside veer. We ran some double option, and then we ran some perimeter midline triple stuff to get the ball out, to get the ball pitched down the perimeter. So, but you're right, we did not run as much inside veer as we traditionally do.
Georgia Southern is the opponent for this weekend. Again, any other questions we'll get you now or throughout the show. Just raise your hand and we'll get to you. But love interacting with our audience. We'll do so here or through Twitter or text or whatever the case may be. Georgia Southern was 8-0 in the Sun Belt Conference a year ago. They won it in their first year in the league. This is a team that spent a significant period of time in the Southern Conference. They were in it from 1993 until 2013. And so 20 seasons, and in those 20 seasons, they were able to win or share 10 conference championships. And so they were a pretty solid bunch back then. The question about going into this ball game, Coach, how much is this like and unlike preparing for the same type of offense as last week?
Well, they are in the shotgun. They are in the spread. They do have a lot of, a quarterback run in their offense. But the difference is really Georgia Southern probably closer mirrors our offense than it does Western Carolina's offense. There is a true triple option aspect to their offense from the pistol. Now, how much of that has to do with that's what Coach Fritz wants to do there long term, or that's what he's doing there because of the group that he inherited, that's what they're doing. And they're doing it very, very well. So their pitch backs are their wide receivers. Their dive back are their tailbacks. And then their load backs, he's a 6 foot, 260-pound H-back tight end. So, and then Kevin Ellison, their quarterback, who comes back this week after being suspended the first 2 weeks. He could run the triple option, under center, shotgun, whatever. He's a very talented player.
And he has got some weapons that we're going to talk about as we go along here. Their season to this point, they lost at West Virginia in the first game of the year back on the 5th of September, 44-0. Won against Western Michigan last Saturday at home in Statesboro, 43-17. So two different outcomes, obviously, two different calibers of opponents, if you will.
Sure.
One of the, obviously playing West Virginia, and then you get Western Michigan out of the MAC. And so what have you seen in those films as far as what they how they played in each of those ball games?
First, I do think the West Virginia score is a little misleading. That game was close at the half. It was 16-0 in the third quarter. Georgia Southern struggled offensively in that game. I think a lot of that had to do with West Virginia. Played very well defensively. I think maybe some of it had to do with Ellison being out. But whatever, it was not quite the 44-0, where it's a game that's over in the second quarter. Looking at them last year, which we looked at everything they had from last year, you look at they 3 points at Georgia Tech, had a chance to win the game. NC State, they're getting ready to go up 17 with 4 minutes left and fumble, and NC State comes back and beats them. And then their only other loss was to Navy. So I think that the West Virginia score is a little misleading. The Western Michigan score is a game where they absolutely dominated the game. So I think we're seeing a team that's probably the best team in the Sun Belt again this year, and a very, very good mid-major FBS football team.
11 teams in that league. They were able to go 8-0 in it a year ago and would have gone to a bowl had they been eligible to do so. Coach has already talked about Willie Fritz. He was at Sam Houston State, among other places, and certainly was, you would think, at least from the outside, when Georgia Southern's going to make a new hire, to bring in someone familiar where you're not totally changing things over. Now, sometimes you really want to change it totally, but in this case, they weren't necessarily looking to make wholesale changes to what they do from a schematic perspective, and so here comes a guy that kind of believes in some of the same things.
Right. I think he's taken what he inherited and used those. I think they've got 17 FBS transfers, and they're too deep, so he's taken out a lot of very talented players from other schools and added those into the roster that he had. I know that they're recruiting very, very well because we've run into them a lot in the state of South Carolina and the state of Georgia on the recruiting trail, and I know what kind of players they're signing. So, I don't think that this is a deal where it's just they're going to be good for a couple of years. I think he's building a program down there that's going to be good at the FBS level for a long time to come.
On the defensive side, particularly, you mentioned some tremendous size on the inside on that defensive line. Tell me about that.
Well, their two interior kids are both north of 6 foot and north of 300 pounds, and so they're pretty wide bodies in there. The rest of their defense is not, not that they're small, they're not, but they don't have the overwhelming size of the two interior kids, but they run so well. So I think, we're going to be challenged because of the size of some of the front guys, and then we're going to be challenged because of the speed of everybody else. So I think it's a good defensive unit we're facing. The defensive coordinator there has been there for a while. He was on Coach Monken's staff, so he's faced the Citadel and faced the triple option over the years between Wofford and us a good bit. So it's it's something that he's going to feel very comfortable against us as well.
We talked about how late third quarter, fourth quarter, you felt like you were pulling away, you felt like the opposition was getting tired. In this game, they are going to have, maybe not all on the defensive side of the football, but they do have 22 more, or 2 full teams of 11 more scholarship players than you do. More depth, that's what usually hurts teams that go into games like this.
Yeah, and it's, that's the reality of the FCS, FBS games. They've got 22 more scholarships. Their budget is over double what ours is, and that goes from everything from recruiting to travel to whatever, everything that they have as far as resources. And then, facility-wise, they've invested millions to upgrade their facilities, and they have a great place there. So, but that's what it is. I mean, it's we're playing in FBS schools, so you expect those things, and it's something that going into it.
Fans will notice that there's a huge structure in the end zone. I remember when it was just a berm, basically where people would sit. And so they have filled it out quite nicely. You'll play in front of a crowd that could get as much as 25,000. You've got a lot more kids on your roster this year than I recall last year from the state of Georgia. As you mentioned, you're recruiting against them and others in that particular area. So you've got some guys that are going to be in their home states again this week.
Yeah, and we've, traditionally at Lenore-Rhine, I would say 40% of our roster was from the state of Georgia. We've always recruited heavily down there. The football's very, very good. The coaching is very, very good, and the academics are very good. So they're a good fit for us there at Lenore-Rhine. They're a good fit for us here at the Citadel. So we're going to have large numbers from the state of Georgia, as long as we're here. Certainly it is a chance for some of those guys to go back home. Ben Roberts, who was here when I got here, is from Statesboro. So it's kind of going back home for him. Mark Thomas is from down around there. Jordan Black, our true freshman quarterback that we're redshirting, he's going to travel with us this weekend. We're going to be about 30 minutes from his home. So we've got quite a few guys that are going back close to home.
You bring up something that reminds me of a question I've been intending to ask, and that is, this game is different than games you'll travel in the Southern Conference. So, two-part question. How many players can you take on a trip like this? Can't take them all, obviously.
No, I mean, we're regulated by our budget.
Gotcha.
So, we're maybe taking 1 or 2 more this game than we traditionally do. We're always going to travel somewhere in the mid-60s for a road game, but there's no restriction numbers by our conference.
Gotcha.
The only thing that restricts us is our budget.
Okay, sounds good. Bulldogs are going to Georgia Southern this weekend. That is a team that spent a lot of time in the FCS. They won 6 national championships when they were in the league, and the weird part about it, they won back-to-back titles 3 times to add up to the 6, 85-86, 89-90, and 99-2000. That will be, I'm sure, something that you'll see some things marking when you're at Georgia Southern this weekend. Hope the crowd will come with us when the Bulldogs go up there on Friday to play on a Saturday ball game. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the personnel that Georgia Southern has and will put in front of the Citadel Bulldogs this weekend when they play. The Dogs are 2-0 after a 28-10 win over Western Carolina, and the Mike Houston Radio Show will continue in a moment from Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley on Sports Radio 1450.
I needed to deposit a check. I was about to head to the bank, but out of nowhere, it just started to rain. Like, really rain. I did not want to go out. But then I was like, duh, just use your phone. Mobile deposit techno thingy to the rescue. I'm Raina, and I bank human at TD Bank.
Welcome back to Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue in West Ashley. This is the Mike Houston Radio Show. My name is Mike Legg. Thanks for being with us tonight as the Bulldogs are ready for their first road trip of the season as they are going to take on the Georgia Southern Eagles coming up on Saturday night, a 6 o'clock ball game. Coach, I know we're expecting the temps in Georgia to be in the mid-80s, upper, 87-ish during the day. Who knows where you'll be by the time you kick off at 6 o'clock, but I think you're going to be somewhere in the 70s up there, and I don't think there are a whole lot of chances for rain, so that's what your forecast looks at.
Yeah, and I expect it to be a little bit warmer than our first two games have been. The good thing about practicing in Charleston during the preseason is we're pretty acclimated to the heat, so I don't think it's going to really bother either team to a great degree. Our kids do a great job throughout the week preparing their bodies, and Andy Clausen is always on them about making sure they're hydrated so that cramps don't affect us. So, I think we'll be okay.
If you could pick the temperature and the humidity for your team that would give you the best advantage, what would you pick?
Depends on who we're playing. If we're playing Georgia Southern, I don't think it matters because we both have basically the same climate. Probably the only negative about the Western Carolina game was I was hoping it'd be 90 with very high humidity. So, especially with us wearing all white, I think that would have been probably another deafening blow, but it was not. It was cool. It was overcast, and humidity was not very high, so they caught a break there.
We did get a question by text that actually is one we'll get all the time, but we tend to get the uniform question. What are you going to look at for this weekend?
Well, we're all white again, since we're on the road. At home is when we'll mix it up the most. We can wear the lead on the road as long as we get it pre-approved as a light jersey. But at home is when we'll see the most mix-up. So we'll be white on white again this weekend.
You even had mostly white helmet as far as that goes. Even the Block C had
white and silver. Yeah. You give Kevin Yeager much time, and his imagination runs wild. So he always comes up with something pretty creative for the uniform. And the kids loved it. They're all about the swag and all that stuff. So that kind of stuff excites them.
We got another question from the audience that we want to bring up. The first two ball games of the season have been on ESPN3, and therefore there are media timeouts.
Right.
Sometimes if scores don't occur, first quarter of this game, for example, was the perfect example. If no one scores, they'll take those timeouts after punts.
Right.
And so you will from time to time have more timeouts. You may have longer timeouts.
Right.
Does that affect anything? Does it feel like your rhythm is being interrupted, or what has the first two games been like that for that?
So far, I don't think it's been a real negative for us. I think that early in the season it can be a positive because it does give you extra time to make corrections, to really talk through things you're getting ready going out on the field, and so early in the season, I think it's not that bad. As we get later on, it'll probably turn into a pain for us a little bit, and I can especially see if we're playing someone and we get them to that point where they're about to wear out, and you keep getting these 2-minute media timeouts, and you get 3 per quarter plus their own timeouts, then certainly they can help them keep their team fresh.
You have talked about a couple of their offensive weapons. Their quarterback is Kevin Ellison, and you're going to see him for the first time this season. As you mentioned, he served a suspension for the first 2 ball games, and so scouting report on the quarterback you're going to see this week.
Tough runner, very good feet, very poised, in the pocket, throws it well, but runs it very, very well. And just really he's in a legitimate threat in the run game. He's very experienced. He's not going to make a whole lot of mistakes. Upshaw, the backup, he's a good player too. Most teams running this offense would take him as a 1, so they've got 2 guys there that are like starters. But Ellison, to me, carries himself like a leader. So I think that's the big difference.
We'll talk more about them in just a second, but I want to flip that just a little bit so that you can talk about your quarterback and what Dominique Allen has done in his first 2 ball games, because sometimes you're a sophomore, you come in and spell a guy. That's different than knowing you're the guy, knowing you're the starter. So with that in mind, how has he done as a whole in the first 2 ball games?
Well, I think Davidson, obviously, he played fantastic for his first start. That being said, the game was well out of reach early on, and so there wasn't a ton of pressure. This game, there was a lot of pressure throughout the game. It was a pretty hostile environment. They were, changing some stuff up on him. I thought overall he handled himself very well. He did make some mistakes, and he made some costly ones. But fortunately, we were playing well enough to overcome those, and I think that it's been a good learning experience for him. He'll be in a little bit of a different environment this weekend because he'll be playing a much better team. He's from the Savannah area, so he's going to be playing close to home in front of a lot of people that he knows and a lot of family. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses this week.
This week, he rushes for 99 yards. He got 70 from Vinny and 56 from Cam, but the fullbacks were handled a little better, perhaps, than in week 1. And I know sometimes that's going to happen, not that they were neutralized, but
right.
That's when you're allowed and did, and as the numbers bear out, the slot backs were able to show a little bit more what they had this week.
Yeah, and I think that game could have potentially been even bigger for the slot backs if we'd have been able to execute a little bit better. And the other thing that stands out, Dominique made 2 great passes, one to Alex Glover for a huge gain to set up a score, and then one to Rudder Brown for a 58-yard gain to set up another score. So I thought he distributed the ball well, but I thought he threw it well when he needed to also.
We went down to the sidelines to Jay after Rudder's catch, and he used the words hand-to-hand combat. He was fighting the whole time on that
It was.
catch.
And we've given Rudder a hard time. He now has 2 50-plus yard completions in his career that didn't score. So, I told him he was trying to set a school record for the longest play that did not get in the end zone. So, but he's a big joker. So he was dragging the Western Carolina DB for a while, and before he finally got him to the ground.
We talked about your running backs. Matt Breda is the one you'll have to look out for them.
What a great player.
Oh, yeah, and I was amazed to see that in 2013, he had 1 carry. Last year, he has 1,485 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 7 of those were 50-plus yard runs.
Yeah, I think I've got this right. He led the nation last year at the FBS level in 50-plus yard plays. And then this is a guy he's a junior on the field. I think NFL.com has him ranked as the 5th best skill player in Division I football. He is really a great talent. And when you flip on the film and you see him running away from Georgia Tech, guys have the angle on him, they can't catch him. Running away from Navy, running away from NC State, and you talk to coaches at those places, and they're like, "No, listen, he's legit. He's the real deal." So I think we're really going to be tested with him. You put he and Ellison together in the same backfield, behind a large offensive line that does a good job with the run blocking, and certainly it's going to be a test.
The Bulldogs take on the Eagles of Georgia Southern coming up this weekend. Big ball game for the Dogs, and then they come back home for the Hall of Fame game against Charleston Southern, and so it'll be a short time away for the Dogs, and then back at home. Then an off week as far as play goes, and another home game, and so front-loaded certainly with regards to the home games. There is another big game in the league this weekend, the Chattanooga-Samford ball game. One of the polls, the coaches' poll, has Chattanooga first, Samford second, and so that's a big ball game this weekend. Should be fun to watch.
It is.
That one.
It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I think Chattanooga 2 weeks ago almost beats Jacksonville State, who took Auburn to overtime. So obviously, they're very good again this year. Samford has really come out and played well early in the year. Chris Hatcher has them, I think, playing probably at a higher level than they were a year ago, and so it'll be interesting to see how that game turns out. It's at Samford, so I don't know if that'll be a factor or not, but it'll be certainly a good ball game.
Where else did Hatcher coach?
Georgia Southern.
That's right. That's right. Hatcher was at Georgia Southern and was at Murray State. Now is at Samford, and so they don't appear to be dropping off much where that is. Is concerned. It's a pretty good scenario. So closing moments here overall with regards to Georgia Southern. Tell us again what you're expecting on in all 3 phases.
Well, the thing that I've told our kids and I've said to everyone else, I think we're playing well right now. I think we're going to find out a lot about ourselves down there. Certainly we're facing a very good football team. But our kids are going to go down there. I expect them to go out, play well. I expect them to compete. I expect them to enjoy playing the game of football. And how that goes for us, we'll find out. But certainly we've got to do a great job of stopping their run game. When we're on the field defensively, we've got to do a great job of controlling the line of scrimmage when we're on offense. We've got to eliminate some of the mistakes we made last week. If we can do that and not go with the big play and be solid in the kicking game, then I think we could have a shot. So
you've got a buzz going on in this town.
Yeah.
Congratulations for that.
Well, and hopefully we can keep it going, and I think we can. The kids are. I think the kids their hard work is paying off. They're playing with a lot of confidence, and I really want to see us continue to build and improve week to week. So we're excited.
Georgia Southern will host the Citadel Bulldogs this weekend. It's a 6 o'clock ball game. We will take the air with our pregame coverage on this very station beginning at 4 o'clock with 2 hours of pregame show that will get you ready for that particular ball game. And so the Dogs will take on the Eagles. Coach, as always, thanks for your time. Good luck the rest of the week.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to Fiery Rons, and thanks to all of our alum who are here tonight. Go Bulldogs.
Thank you, Coach. That's Coach Mike Houston. I'm Mike Legg. We thank you so very much for being with us this evening as the Citadel Bulldogs are ready to go on the road and take on the Georgia Southern Eagles. For Barry Daniels back in our studio, we also want to say thanks to Jay Harper here at our site at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue. We'll talk to you next week on the Coach Mike Houston Radio Show.